Hi there everyone, welcome back to Weir Yard, and today we've got another extreme old versus new. In the left corner, it's Hornby Dublo with their die-cast behemoth, the Princess Coronation class Duchess of Montrose. Can it hold its own and compete with its modern-day counterpart? 70 years nearly separate these two. This is the all-new Hornby Super Detail model. Came out in 2019, and it really does look the part. But can it hold its own? Can it compete with the old-school counterpart? We're going to do this. Come with me, and it's Extreme Retro Review. It isn't often that you get to see Hornby Dublo on a layout like this, but today it's really special. It's the Hornby 100th centenary year, so I thought I would continue my series of head-to-head. Old versus new. This is the Hornby Princess Coronation Battle Royale, and well, as you can see, we've come a long way since the Duchess of Montrose on the left was new. But I have very fond memories of this model, as I'm sure an awful lot of other people do as well. This particular model has it's led a hard life. It's been loved and played with by two completely different generations. And indeed, it's gone on to service the generation after them too. And it's still a firm favourite of my little nephews. But times do move on, and it's a model that in the Hornby range has continually been updated over the years. So you see here the all-new Hornby Princess Coronation. We did a full review of this model last year when it came out, and I was really excited when it did. It has to be said, it's one which really does look very, very special. And it was a stroke of genius of Hornby and Simon Kohler to bring this out in exactly the same identity as the old Hornby Dublo one. But the detail differences are really, really quite marked. It's, just testament to how much development has gone into the hobby that we can go from a model like this to like this in a little under 70 years. But it has to be said, both have their charm, and I really do love both models, which is why the Hornby model and the Hornby Dublo model have a place in my collection. Indeed, this Hornby Dublo model still gets fairly regular usage at my father's house, where my little nephews run it on a small 3-rail layout in a hobby room. But, well, what are the differences? Where have we come in nearly 70 years? Well, first off, looking to the old model, you can see that the livery application there, that's one area where we really have moved on leaps and bounds. These were added by transfers, and as you can see there on the cab side, it wasn't uncommon to end up with a model where these transfers hadn't quite been applied as you would really want them to be. But that was just par for the course back in the day. On the tender there, you can see the lining actually was really good for its time. And the cycling lion there with the British Railways was transfer applied, and is actually really, really quite nice. But when we go over to the newer model, you can see that the finesse of that lining is just, well, it's so much finer and so much closer to what the real locomotive would have had. And you can see there as well, the lining on that front cylinder is very, very fine, whereas what's left of it on the cylinder of the Hornby Dublo model, I mean, let's forgive it, nearly 70 years of patina, of play, and play value it did give. The lining that you can see there is so much coarser. But we move over there to the cab side numbers and the lining there. It's straight and true, unlike the Hornby Dublo model, and it's just so much finer. Turning to the tender, the actual BR logo is the right size, and actually for the first time it becomes apparent that actually the one that was on the Hornby Dublo model is not quite right. It's sort of elongated, and I guess that's because of a limitation of just how small they could make it and still make it legible. The lining on that tender is just where it should be, and it looks so much better for it. But back in the 1950s, it has to be said, this really did hit the mark for so many people, and it's still a lovely model today. Other areas that you can see the difference, well, look at the handrails on that boiler and the finesse of the casting. It is a die-cast metal model, and actually in the centenary year, it has to be said, Hornby are bringing out the Duchess of Atholl, the sister locomotive to this, in a die-cast top, and it's billed as being an awful lot more finessed than these models ever could have been, and I'm really interested to see that. It's certainly on my shopping list. But back in the day, these moulds were handmade. There was none of your laser scanning, none of your laser spark erosion, or, everything had to be done carefully by hand with people with slide rules and vernier scales. It was really what the eye saw was king, and it looked right, it was right as far as they were concerned, and actually it's put in some sterling service. But if we go to the new model, everything is right. Laser scanned off extant original members of the class. Everything is where it should be, exactly as it should be, and the size that it should be. And you can see there the detail just gets deeper and deeper into the model. The closer that you look, the more the detail comes to life. And underneath there, where the splashes are, you can see it's all separately applied pieces. It just looks real. And the space under the boiler curves away and is a space under the boiler as per the original locomotives. On the Hornby Dublo model, well, the detail is nice. It really did stand the test of time back in the 1950s, but you can see there's like a kind of skirt at the bottom of the boiler, and I guess it's a limitation of the way that these models were put together. They have a lid that's just a solid piece of metal with the motor inside. The motors are so much bigger, but, it was good for its day. That thick handrail compared to the ever so fine handrails on the modern model. It is just so nice to look at this. Then we turn to the wheels. This again, I suppose, is a big area where Hornby are so far ahead of the previous models and those old models. You can see there the detail just keeps on giving. Such fine and slender wheels, just like the real thing. Even the bogie wheels there as well, perfect in every way. When we move over to the Hornby Dublo model, they used, well, for economies, those are the same wheels that you would see on the front pickups of the 264 4MT tank locomotive, on so many others of the range. The Bristol Castle had them as well. The front pony truck on the 8F had the same wheels. They were good in their day, but you can see they're just so crude by comparison. Cast from zinc mazoc. And those wheels there, again, they're just crude by comparison. But they were heavyweight and they were reliable. And that's really what you wanted in a toy. And that's an area, I think, where the Hornby Dublo, Duchess and Montrose did excel. This was a rugged and reliable toy for the masses, and it certainly performed that way. Will the Hornby model still be going strong in 70 years' time? Somehow, I think actually, possibly not, if it sees the kind of use that this model had. This model has run literally hundreds of miles, and it still works. I'm not sure that the trade-off between finesse and detail on the new model would let it get that far, but certainly it has proved ever so reliable thus far. And, I'm happy to give it its chance to get to that same kind of mileage. When we look at the valve gear, the fluting on there, it's all completely accurate. The Walschutz's valve gear, the cross slide, everything is just so nicely done. And we talked about this on the full review that we did when we took a really close look at this model. But when we go over to the Hornby Dublo model, it is ever so crude. But it worked. It gave the same sense of motion that the Walshot's valve gear has in real life, and that, I suppose, was really quite amazing at the time for a generation that only a few decades before had grown up with the most crude of tinplate O-gauge models. The rear bogie on this is a heavy die-cast casting. It was good in its day. It does actually track and follow the track, but you can see there daylight where it should not be. Whereas when we turn to the new model, that is actually, there is no daylight where it shouldn't be at all because it's fixed to the frame. That does mean it doesn't track round on the tight corners, but it's all a trade-off and you do get an amazing quality. The flangeless wheels make sure that it doesn't derail, but for me, I prefer this as long as you're prepared for that trade-off that it isn't going to track round the track quite so tight. We've got glazing in the cab windows, and the tender, well, the shape is perfect. The chassis, there is so much to it, and we've got a much more accurate rendition of a coal load, which is actually removable, to show you the inside of the tender, should you so choose. When we look to the Hornby Dublo model, no such luxuries. It is pretty much not much more than bent up pieces of tin. The chassis is crude and basic, but it did the job in the day. And the tender lid is tin plate, bent to shape, with none of the nuances of the real locomotive's shape. The inside front face of the tender is basic to say the least, and that coal load, whilst at its time it was a moulded plastic load which was really quite detailed, it really doesn't hold its own anymore, and there is nothing underneath it. If you try to remove it, you can't. It's integral. You would just expose the hollowed out interior of the tender. The buffers on this model, well, the old model, they were die cast. They're not sprung loaded in any way. But the new model, sprung loaded and very, very fine turned brass. They are actually more robust as well. One of the big problems with zinc mazoc is that it doesn't hold fine detail particularly well and becomes very prone to being broken with knocks, and so many of these models end up losing their buffers through rough shunts with the floor in the hands of children. But the Hornby model actually does withstand a lot more bumps and knocks, and it goes to show that you don't have to trade finesse for strength in every occasion, and the buffers on this model are very much testament to that. If we look to the front faces of the models, the smoke deflectors on the new model are so much finer. The rivet detail is there. Looking to the old Hornby Dublo model, well, it's just a crude piece of bent metal. There is a suggestion of some of the detail that you can see compared to the new Hornby model, but it's very, very crude. As a child, I actually thought that they were screw heads holding the deflector on. They're not, but the crudeness of the detail, you could be forgiven for thinking that. And the funnel at the top, it's just a blob on the Hornby Dublo model. Yes, it follows the basic shape, but compared to the new Hornby model, well, it's not got a patch on it, it has to be said. In terms of running reliability, the Hornby Dublo model will run and run and run, but it very much feels like it bludgeons its way through the track. Now, I don't have access to a Hornby Dublo 3-rail layout. You can just about see the pickup skates visible underneath there. That means if I put it on this layout, it would just short it out, and there'd be no chance of this running. So I can't really do a haulage test, but I know from experience that this model will pull the pretty heavy Hornby Dublo tinplate coaches, and I've easily had a train of 5 or 6, even 7 coaches running behind this, although the wheel spin does tend to creep in a little bit. On the other hand, the Hornby model is pretty sure-footed, helped by the fact that the modern coaching stock is so much more free running, and that's really important. This locomotive can actually pull more like for like if you give it the new coaches, though I dare say if you loaded it up with the older style coaches, the Hornby Dublo model would very much give it a good run for its money. But this has all-wheel pickups, which means it doesn't stutter, it doesn't suffer dirty track quite so readily, and it will run reliably down to a crawl with that super modern spec motor, which doesn't impinge on the cab at all. On the Hornby Dublo model, and I'm finally going to pick this up and I'm going to show you. Inside the cab of the Hornby Dublo model, there is quite literally nothing but the back of the motor. It's got such a crude drawbar assembly. There's just nothing in there. It's the back of the lid and the bottom of the chassis. You can even see right through to the track. But this was the norm, the standard, and, well, it did its sterling duty in the day. The tender drawbar is nothing more than a hook on a piece of metal. It does have some pretty good motion from side to side, which meant that the tender followed the locomotive really, really clearly, but you can see it's about as basic as it's possible to come. Inside the modern Hornby model, it couldn't be more different. You can see there we have got full backhead detail, and it really is nicely picked out. The entirety of the back of the locomotive as well is modelled. It looks like a real locomotive. The tender I can't easily remove because of the wired connections, but you can see that they sit closer, it follows much better, and overall this package is just light years ahead. You can also see the profile of the cab roof is so much better than when we look back to the old Hornby Dublo model. This particular example has taken a few knocks over the years, so you can see that the zinc mazout casting has actually stood up to that and taken it by bending rather than breaking. I'm not sure that if you subjected the Hornby model to the same kind of bad treatment that it would survive just as well, but this is a super detailed miniature masterpiece. The Hornby Dublo model was only ever a toy. A good toy for its day, but a toy nonetheless. When we look to the front faces of the locomotive, well, you can see that the Hornby Dublo model is so much cruder. We've got the basic shapes, but again, this comes back to the original moulds being more made by eye and measurements with some quite crude tools, rather than the computer-controlled laser-etched moulds of today that this model has come out of. Mould technology has moved on so much in nearly 70 years, but you can see that the basic shapes are there. The model makers of yore did do a really good job, but in terms of detail, back in the Hornby Dublo days, it was all black, any colour you like, as long as it's black on that smokebox front. The number was a transfer that actually quite readily rubbed off, and the smokebox dart was quite simply, very carefully painted on by a person in the factory with a steady hand. On the Hornby model, the smokebox dart is a separate piece, and that smokebox number is finer and it's tempo printed, which again is a show that even though it's more fine, it is actually able to stand up to more handling. It's less likely to rub off than the old transfers would. You can see as well the buffers are closer to scale, and well, that front drawbar hook on the Hornby Dublo model, this was a standard feature, and you could find that on the 8F, the 4MT, the Castle class, and well, they all had the same thing. On the Hornby model, it's available in the user-fitted detail bag, and I haven't actually chosen to fit it on this as of yet. I really must get round to that. But you can see it doesn't really detract for not having it. And that front buffer beam is, well, so much more clearly defined. On the Hornby Dublo model, it looks a bit splodgy, like the paint has filled in any detail that was originally there. But on the Hornby model, it's all sharp and clear and just looks better and smoother all round. Overall, what's the difference? Well, there's 70 years of difference, and it does show. Both of these models have their charms. Which would I pick? Well, I don't know. The one on the left has all the charm and the memories of childhood, and it still keeps on giving a sterling performance. The one on the right was an opportunity to revisit that nostalgia and have it in modern, super detailed form on my current modern railway. I love both these locomotives, and I'd like to thank Hornby and Hornby Dublo before them for bringing both of these to the market and bringing so much joy to so many people. Thanks very much for watching. This is me, Jenny Kirk, saying I hope you enjoyed this retro review, old versus new in this Hornby centenary year. We're going to be doing more of these videos, and I hope you'll join us for them. And we're going to be comparing more of the old Hornby Dublo range with its modern counterpart and seeing just how far we have come. Don't forget to like this video and share it too. And also subscribe to the channel and you'll be the first to know about new videos as and when they go up. But until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying you take really good care of yourself. Bye for now. Today's video has been brought to you in part thanks to the generous donation of my fans on Patreon. And a huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Michael Churchwood, Alec Ralph, Anthony Hunt, William Wade, Wayne Johns, Offshore Alan, oorail.co.uk and Tepic. Today's video has been brought to you by my books, Bringing Home the Stars, Twinkle Little Star, and also you can get the complete comic collections of All Over the House, Books 1, Books 2, and also the wacky zany Life of Knob T. Mouse. Thanks and catch you later.